Hello, Tyler Bryden here. Hope everything's going well. What is it today? Saturday, February 9th, 2025. It's the Super Bowl. I don't care about football. Do not care about the Super Bowl. Only thing that interests me, even a little bit, Kendrick Lamar performance with SZA. I'm going to see his concert this year. Super fired up. A little preview of that concert. I will not be watching this live. I'm sure there'll be clips everywhere. Will he play Not Like Us, A minor, all this stuff? We all want to know. There's no way that he can't play it. So that part, interesting to me. We got Donald Trump at the game there as well too, stealing the limelight from T-Swift perhaps, and obviously the football game as a whole. Pretty crazy what the NFL's done, but I just can't watch the Super Bowl. This is just one slow-moving, advertisement-rich a day that I can just watch the highlights a couple minutes later, get all that information. In general, in sports, I can't really watch. I did watch some of the Leafs game last night, the Toronto Maple Leafs versus Vancouver. But still, why watch 3 hours filled with advertisements when I can just see 15 seconds on Sportsnet and get literally all the best parts of the game? Don't understand it. But who am I to say there's 100 million plus people watching this game? I guess I've got a small leg to stand on here. I didn't feel that inspired this week. I just thought some of these topics have been beat to death. And what am I talking about? You're going to know right away. Obviously, the Doge effort, if we're looking at sort of politics, culture, and I think just world news, this has been really the story of probably even the last 2 weeks. Elon Musk, we got big balls, we've got all this stuff just ripping through all the records in the government and basically just revealing that there has been massive, wasteful spend taking place. And this is something that we all knew, but when you get the actual name of it, you get where the money was going, how much of it, who it was going to. Really quickly, it starts to be more and more scandalous. The content is everywhere. I will say, all these guys obviously doing an interesting job breaking this down. And I think they're right about one thing, which I just don't understand. To me, this is and should be a wildly popular thing for almost anyone who is a tax-paying citizen. I know that in some cases there are people who are like actually getting hurt from this and the rapid pace that's happening at this is what sort of Bill Maher was saying on Friday night. I love watching Bill Maher, and he was juggling back and forth with just, this is both great, but it's almost too drastic. And obviously people are saying there's a reason why this is so drastic. We're in so much debt. We're on this trajectory and this needs to happen now. And then I think there's the other side which is saying, hey, a little bit more empathy around where this money was going and who was relying on this is required. Frankly, I understand both sides. I think I'm leaning a little bit towards like drastic decisions have to be made, because this is something even personally I've experienced in my own life when I've been running a business and we've maybe come onto harder times, or when COVID happened, I needed to lay people off, or otherwise we just weren't going to survive. And those were like drastic, quick decisions that had to be made. But if I hadn't made them, I literally would have destroyed that business. And because I made those decisions, we're now still alive today, still generating revenue, still growing. And so when you operate through that business lens, those radical, drastic decisions, maybe those make a little bit more sense and you can stomach those, even though you know that there are some people who are being hurt and burned on the other side of this. And in this case, some of these seem like really difficult ones where maybe it's people directly in the USA who are being hurt, who are relying on those type of things. In other cases, maybe it's not so much empathy given, where it's high-paying elitists who have been raking in millions of dollars. And so we don't feel as bad about those, but there is this sort of spectrum of how hard this impacts people, and then I think how much empathy we have. Overall, I think it's a positive effort, and besides all the chaos, the tariffs, all the stuff that I think a lot of people say, Trump, what the hell are you doing? This is too much instability. Overall, there's a lot of excitement around this exposure of government waste, and hopefully the realization that this can stop and will stop. And there's been even radical, again, that word radical, depending on how you look at it, suggestions of let's throw this all on the blockchain so everyone can see this. Or less radical things like there's no reconciliation here. There's no one ever saying no to anything. We can't even audit and track these things. So maybe we should have those theses in place. That one, just common sense, makes sense. And in any organization structure, that is what's required. So why the largest organization on the planet is that not required? So I think that's been the story of the last couple of weeks. I think this is going to continue. They're now moving on apparently to the Pentagon. And there's this clip here with Jon Stewart conversation worthwhile watching, this exchange between Kathleen Hicks, I don't know exactly who this person is, but defending the Pentagon, and then Jon Stewart pushing at her. And then even there, like, same thing. Like, if everyone was secure and everyone felt good and everyone had their health care covered and all this stuff, I don't think anyone's really going to care. That's unfortunately not how things are going. And so wasteful spend, then there's much more likelihood to attack it, especially if it's going to some of these crazy things like pride parades in the Philippines or whatever, all these things that are taking place, which great, they could be good causes. But when, say, a person or a family is faced with difficult times, when there's no social safety net available to them, what do they have to do? They have to cut, they have to make decisions, they have to prioritize. And that's something that's not happening from this countrywide level, obviously in the United States. And it's not just the United States. This is most likely every country. There's money that's going to Ukraine that is unaccounted for. Ukraine's saying they're not getting that money. Apparently there's money that's going to Haiti, and they're like, we're not seeing this money. All this is being filtered and taken by bureaucrats and middlemen and all these sort of people who have figured out how to game this system. So we know this is happening in the US. What I'm loving is I think there's the possibility that this now spreads to other countries and may actually become a fundamental requirement for people who are running in government, that they say, hey, we are willing to expose this. We are willing to do the audits. We want to see the corruption. We want to weed out the spend. And people who just want to uphold the status quo will not be creating the passion and the excitement when you can literally look at the states right now and see, holy crap, there's where all my taxpayer money is going. We're resolving this and we're exposing this. And this is like an exciting piece that's happening. Now you look at your country and there's no effort to get it done. I just don't think that's going to be acceptable. So that's something I'm super excited about. We now have, for example, this Canada Spends. I'm not exactly sure what the structure of this is, but really going down and starting to inspect where is Canadian government spending happening. And some of these things are not all perfect for me. And I think this is the other piece where it's like, hey, it's fun and games and it's exciting until it actually impacts you. So for example, I have been part of the SHRED program. They also highlight the NRC IRAP program. I've been part of that. And as a business owner, that's been super helpful. But in some cases, I think there's strong arguments being made of why is taxpayer money going to fund certain businesses? Are these, developments being made worthwhile? And I think from the business side, you can make more argument that you need to stimulate growth in Canada, that you need to help businesses employ people and make Canada more of the world for business. And so maybe that has a little less scrutiny. But then you also start to look at the more global things, which obviously people are not liking as much. The global fight to climate resilience in Latin America, indigenous tourism funds, these type of things. And again, I can see the arguments on both sides. Some people say, okay, some of the foreign aid stuff is allowing countries like Canada and the United States to have a presence in countries that's important, especially when China is creeping around the world, getting more and more embedded with specific countries, or that indigenous culture in Canada is actually an important part that brings people to Canada. So I understand that there's argument on both sides here. And in some cases, a lot of these records were transparent already. It's just the attention is on them now. And so I think that part is exciting now. Does stuff happen in every country for this? I'm not sure. We'll see what the outcome in the US is here. We'll see in Canada. And we've got very different paths where we're headed here in Canada right now. I'll be following this along and continuing to provide any insight and perspective as I watch this very interesting trend that's taking in place. And what they did talk about in All In, which was interesting, is this hasn't been the first time this has happened in the US. It happened, I believe, in the early 1900s. And then Bill Clinton also did the same thing. And even where Doge is now was actually originally created by Obama to weed out this wasted spend. There is this backlash against it right now. We can see all the Democrats showing up at the Department of Education or at this USAID place and causing commotion, very peaceful commotion, I would say. All the videos emerging, Maxine Waters, what's your ID? That's my impression of her, but thank you. And I think it's a losing issue. I think most people want to see this, and it's not putting you in a place of love right now when you're seeing these flailing arms come up because there's some audits happening when this was really a platform that Trump ran on, that Elon was very present in. Maybe you didn't know the exact technicalities of how it was going to work, but the immediate exposure and the speed that this is coming out is very exciting. So we now have more efforts. If I shift back to Canada for a minute, this is the other piece, is this is starting to move the needle in other countries, people expecting more. And so we have this Build Canada emerge here. If you're in Canada, I think this is worthwhile at least following now. It's still very new, still very fresh, and we'll see where this, you can start to follow and see some communication happening here, almost 4,000 followers already. And it seems like there is a group of people who has come together who are business leaders in Canada who obviously care about the country. They have a little description of their mission here at the start and what they want to see from Canada. And then you can see some of the team members who are involved. So you've got a core team and then some very big supporters. Anthony Lacavera, if you don't know him, definitely worthwhile person to check out. He's the ex-CEO of Wind. Same with Brian there. You've got Toby from Shopify, Harley Finkelstein, the current president of Shopify, Michael Litt from Vidyard, Mike Murchison, co-founder of Ada. They've done over 1 billion conversations for customer support through AI. These are some of Canada's finest entrepreneurs who are both successful in business and obviously engaged in trying to make the country a better place. And so I'm going to share this in the video. If you're in Canada and you're interested in the type of stuff that I'm talking about in this video here right now, this may be a way to keep involved, keep track. And their first action has really been to release some memos. I'm not going to dive deep into each one, but thematic memos. And it seems like each one's been written by an individual supporter of this, of how Canada can become a better place. And I don't know, maybe some of these have some bias around the type of business they're in, maybe unlock health records, save Canadian lives. I don't know his exact ambitions there, but a memo around there. And obviously that makes a lot of sense when you read it. Canada should be able to sell provincially, and this is something huge that we've seen, especially with the tariffs that Trump is looking to impose possibly on Canada here, and Trudeau's really not helping this effort with the way that he's talking and the strategy that he's got right now. So more provincial trade, which is something that they haven't supported, and transnational pipelines across the country. These things are important, and I'm guessing what we're going to see is more memos come out of this. Now, does this translate into action? I'm not sure. It would be great to see it. But again, this seemingly has just launched. And if you're Canadian, maybe you're not even Canadian, but you're interested in attacking some of the core problems in Canada, and I think globally right now for Western nations who are trying to figure out the next stage of growth and where we head now that maybe this liberal, post-national state experiment has been exposed as not necessarily the most fruitful thing, at least temporarily. Not saying that the post-experiment of what's going to happen now is going to be the most positive way either. Maybe it's in the middle, but it's obvious that there's a huge percentage of the population who wants change and is impacted on these day-to-day things like inflation and wage growth and housing prices and impacted by immigration. And there is this shift that is desired and required to meet the moment right now. I mentioned Trudeau, our resigned prime minister here, who is still acting and doing a lot of stuff right now. And so his recent comment has been, hey, Trump's serious. He wants to annex Canada to get access to its critical minerals, and talking about the sort of strategy involved in beating Trump here, which most Canadians are just saying, hey, just put some people on the border and let's just avoid this whole thing. Because the big discussion is, even if tariffs are being delayed for a month, people's supply chains can be 8 months or whatever. They can be longer. And so the uncertainty of that is already creating chaos in these companies right now. And so Trump, I think, in one case has shifted his mind about maybe just the market performance is not his only thing. He's talking about 10-year bonds and the yields there. But at the same time, predictable, happy business is a valuable thing. And yes, again, in some cases, Canada's taking advantage of us, Mexico's taking advantage of us, but you're actually impacting your own country by these erratic, unpredictable movements. I feel like there is a more meaningful way to carry this type of stuff out, people will push back and say that's not true and this is all art of the deal and all that stuff. But I think there can be support lost here. And out of all the sort of pushback against anything Trump's doing, it seems like tariffs is the biggest one that's causing problems. Even say going after Mexico and Canada, who in most people's perspective, especially Canada, have been good partners of the US. It's creating skepticism of America across the world right now, which is obviously not what you want. Now, what happened here is in Canada that we had large natural gas and a ton of resources here. But because of our mandate for the green economy, the carbon neutral economy, we've shut down a lot of those things. And even, for example, Japan was looking for resources from Canada, and we said, no, it's not going to happen. Now, Japanese prime ministers in the US making apparently $1 trillion investment. Again, these are big numbers. We don't exactly know in the US and buying their resources when that could have been Canada. And throughout this period of time, we have dedicated ourselves basically to completely relying on the US and not diversifying our own customer base of the best resources that we have. And if you think about it, a business with only one customer is not a good business. And that's what we're facing now. And then secondarily, you can see Trump wants Canada's rare earth minerals. Trump comes back saying, no, we're going to get these assets from Ukraine instead. So a lot of back and forth here with just more escalation of it, especially I would say from Trudeau's side. And Trump's just responding because every time he sits down and every time Trudeau said something, Trump comes back, and not necessarily the ideal situation, not really who we want representing us right now here with Trudeau, who again has resigned with the lowest approval rate there has been. And now we're getting shadow representation by Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney, who are just that Spider-Man meme again pointing at each other. There's a bunch of other topics that I was thinking about talking about. We had some big company earnings, Amazon, Google, more and more money going into CapEx here. Their stocks up and down all over the place based on there. We have Palantir, another huge jump. I have a video from 2 months ago, and I was saying, why haven't I bought any Palantir? I still didn't buy any Palantir, and here we are now today. We had Uber, I thought was super interesting. Bill Ackman came in and said they've been quietly building a position in Uber. A $2.3 billion stake. It's only 1.4 of the company. That's big. They jumped after that announcement. We had Palmer Luckey raising $2.5 billion at a valuation of $28 billion, which is pretty crazy. I saw if you're the top 50 employee in OpenAI, your stock could be worth $300 million right now. That's crazy. We had OpenAI deep research, the response to Google's deep research that came out, also with a lot of feedback that people are saying this feels like AGI. Whether that's true or not, and other people's conflicting that pretty dramatically. I had a meme marketing update. There was a great Kill Tony Lie special on Saturday night. I'm looking to plan a vacation. There's these high growth companies, 1 million to 100 million ARR, speedy companies like Cursor. They said, who likes a hockey stick? No, we like stripper poles, and that's what happened with Cursor. Maybe I'll touch on these in another video. Too much for me today, but I hope you enjoyed what I got out here while I had the energy and a little bit of inspiration and passion. Appreciate you checking out this as always, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.